Billionaire reveals black card challenge to two women. Hidden act by Maid changed everything. Emily stood in the cramped kitchen of the bustling diner where she worked, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. The clang of dishes and the sizzle of the grill blurred into a rhythmic chaos she both thrived in and resented. It was just another Saturday, but with every plate served, she felt the weight of her world tightening around her. Between managing unruly customers and balancing her dreams of something greater, she felt the familiar twist of anxiety rise in her chest. Could she really keep up this facade of normalcy for her son? The tips barely covered the bills, but each dollar was a testament to her relentless work ethic. She fought hard to instill strong values in her 6-year-old Jonah, even as her resolve began to waver under the gaudy lights of a life she could never afford. They lived in a modest apartment, and she took pride in their small family, but a constant fear lurked in her mind like a specter. How could she teach him resilience while feeling like she was sinking deeper into a socioeconomic quagmire? The judgments from those more privileged pierced her heart, a reminder of what she lacked, of the choices she was forced to make to survive. Just then, a crisp envelope slipped under her door, the return address from an extravagant estate echoing distance from her life on the streets of Chicago. As she opened it, an invitation to a lavish weekend at the estate of a billionaire grinned back at her, taunting her hopes and fears. It felt surreal. Could she really step into this world of wealth she had only witnessed in her dreams? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the weekend event approached, Emily's thoughts spiraled. Who was she kidding? This was not her world. The thought of mingling with affluent strangers made her palms sweat. What would they think of her? As she continued to pour coffee for a new table, fueling everyone's bright conversations, she felt invisible, just a mere shadow slipping through their vibrant lives. But as she cleaned up, an ember of determination stirred within her. Maybe this was a chance to redefine herself, to show Jonah their strength and what dazzling dreams could look like. Yet the uncertainty gnawed at her. What if she didn't belong? What if she shattered even further under scrutiny? The idea paralyzed her. Even as a flicker of hope dared to emerge, the weight of expectations pressed down, a rock lodged deep in her throat. The week flew by, anticipation twisting into dread. Emily could almost hear the taunts of judgment echo in her mind. Who does she think she is? As she donned her best outfit, her reflection revealed a woman caught between self-doubt and fierce resolve, wrestling with torn emotions. What awaited them at the billionaire's estate? What truths would be revealed, and would either woman emerge unscathed? As she took a deep breath, she felt the storm brewing within her. Emily arrived at the sprawling estate as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced across the meticulously manicured lawns. Her heart raced, each step heavier than the last, each moment brimming with trepidation. The grand entrance loomed before her, a gateway into an unfamiliar world that felt as inviting as it was intimidating. Doubts churned in her mind like a tempest. What if she didn't belong here? What if her secrets and struggles were laid bare for all to see? She took a deep breath, trying to ground herself. This was her moment to seize, a chance to rewrite her narrative. Thoughts of Jonah, his innocent smile and unwavering admiration, anchored her. She had always wanted to be the parent who inspired, who showed him the meaning of resilience. If she could navigate this elite gauntlet tonight, maybe she could instill confidence in him that transcended their financial circumstances. Stepping through the towering door, Emily was swallowed by an atmosphere thick with laughter and clinking glasses. The opulent space buzzed with guests dressed in designer attire, their conversations weaving a tapestry of privilege she had only glimpsed through fragments of television shows. She caught her reflection in a floor-to-ceiling mirror, and while the woman staring back appeared put together, behind her confident facade, tumultuous feelings raged. As she mingled, attempting to blend into the crowd, a sense of alienation washed over her. She overheard snippets of conversations laced with names of expensive boutiques and exclusive clubs. Here she was, a mere waitress on borrowed time, frantically searching for common ground while hyper-aware of her status among the gilded elite. But then, something shifted. She overheard a group discussing philanthropy. Talk of charitable initiatives and community projects ignited a flicker of recognition within her. Emily could speak their language, and her heart beat faster with newfound conviction. Perhaps her experience battling economic hardship offered a unique perspective, worthy of sharing. She wandered closer, drawn to the energetic debate, and cautiously introduced herself. "What do you think?" one of the women asked, her tone inviting yet inquisitive. "You seem to have an interesting take." The question hung in the air, and for a fleeting moment Emily froze. She could either succumb to her insecurities or draw from her life story, the struggles, the sacrifice, and the perseverance she exemplified daily for Jonah's sake. This could be her opportunity to connect genuinely, rather than remain a spectator in this exclusive circle. Taking a deep breath, Emily spoke. "I've worked in a diner my entire life. The resilience I see in my customers, those who fight for a better life every day, inspires me. If there's one thing I know, it's that real change starts with understanding the people you wish to help." The room fell silent. To her surprise, the faces now turned toward her, curiosity lighting their eyes. She had connected, but would it resonate? She felt the burden of judgment lift slightly, replaced by a swell of pride in her authenticity. Later, as the evening went on, Emily found herself dancing among the chattering elites, her laughter mingling with theirs. The psychological barrier she had built began to crack, replaced by a tentative sense of belonging. But in the dim light, doubt lingered like a distant storm. What lay beneath this surface of acceptance? Just then, a figure stepped into her frame, an imposing man with a piercing gaze. "What's a diner girl like you doing in a place like this?" With those words, the storm she had fought to contain began to swirl again. This was not just a challenge, it was a confrontation that would force Emily to reevaluate everything she thought she had achieved. Did she have the strength to defy his assumptions? Would she remain grounded in her truth, or would she tumble back into the shadows she worked so hard to escape? The question echoed in her mind as she prepared to respond, the moment of reckoning drawing nearer. Emily felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins, a paradoxical mix of fear and fierce determination. The man's cold gaze bore into her, prompting thoughts of retreat. Yet she understood that this was no ordinary moment. This was a reckoning she could not afford to avoid. "Who am I?" she repeated, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm someone who knows the struggle of making ends meet, someone who passionately believes in hope and perseverance. I might serve coffee, but I also serve empathy." The words flowed from her with unexpected clarity, surprising even herself. She wasn't asking for validation, she was simply stating her truth. The man's brow furrowed, which gave her pause. She could almost see gears turning behind his eyes. Perhaps he hadn't expected such a response, and the flicker of surprise on his face offered her a fleeting sense of victory. "And you think they care about your empathy here?" he scoffed, pointing toward the crowd, oblivious to the unspoken connection that Emily had created moments before. "These people live in a world defined by money and influence. They don't want to hear your sob story." Emily's heart raced, but she stood her ground. "These stories are not sobs, they're battles fought every day. Behind every wealthy persona, there are stories waiting to be heard. Maybe they need to hear mine. The challenge lay heavy between them, and she felt the attention of nearby guests drift toward this unexpected standoff. For a moment, the music and laughter faded into a dull hum, replaced by the tension that radiated from the confrontation. "You're bold, I'll give you that," he finally conceded, intrigue lacing his voice. "But this is an elite gathering. Understanding comes with experience, and that's not something you can fake." Emily took a deep breath, her instincts screaming to retreat, but the stakes felt higher than ever. The thought of Jonah's bright eyes motivated her further. She realized with clarity that this was not just about her. It was about carving out a space for all those voices drowned beneath the weight of privilege. "Maybe understanding goes both ways," she replied, her tone firm. "You've lived a life I can't even imagine, but that doesn't make your perspective the only truth. Everyone has value, a lesson to be shared, especially those who have been underestimated." The crowd's reactions were mixed, some captivated by her defiance, others dismissive. She was aware that judgment still hovered, but this wasn't merely a matter of opinion anymore. It had transformed into a public declaration of her identity and worth. Feeling the weight of her own words, Emily discerned an opportunity to shift the conversation. "If I've learned anything in my years of working in service, it's that the most profound connections often arise in unexpected places. Perhaps it's time we all started listening a little more intently." The man shifted, as if considering her words. An invisible wall began to crumble. The rigidness in his posture subtly softened. "Interesting," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "And what do you propose? An enlightened discourse on privilege?" An idea sparked in Emily's mind, one she instinctively knew could turn the tides. Why not make this dive into understanding a challenge? I invite you to invest in a project that brings our worlds together, an initiative where we can all contribute our narratives and create pathways for change. As she spoke, the murmurs grew louder, numerous heads turning in her direction. She might have just disrupted the status quo, crossing the divide between Maid and Mogul in a matter of moments. Emily's pulse quickened as she scanned the crowd. She felt alive with purpose, for the first time evidently tapping into a well of influence she never knew she had. The prospects of people's responses hung in the air, and she waited, vulnerable but emboldened. "Let's see what you're made of, then," came a voice from the side, an unexpected ally from among the guests, someone who seemed intrigued by the flame she had ignited. With the ground shifting beneath her, Emily felt the intoxicating possibility of change unfurling before her. But she was aware that this newfound direction was only the beginning. She would have to delve into deeper waters, confront her fears on this escalating journey, and discover just how far she was willing to go for herself and Jonah. The stakes were rising. But as she engaged with the elite, she feared the tides might be shifting beyond her control. Would she be able to face the deeper truths that awaited her? The atmosphere crackled with anticipation as Emily processed the shift in energy around her. The man's challenge echoed in her mind, a bold response from someone who clearly held power in this elite circle. She could feel the judgmental gazes of the elite pressing into her skin. Yet the unexpected ally's intrigue felt like a lifeline. Stepping into this uncharted territory invoked a delicate balance of fear and exhilaration. Relying heavily on her instincts, Emily recognized that this was her moment, a chance to elevate not just her voice, but also the stories of those she had always served. With the wealth of her life experiences infusing her resolve, she turned to face her onlookers. "The challenge will require courage from all of us," she asserted, hoping she could hold on to the momentum. "It's not just about funding a project. It's about opening our ears and hearts. We must share and listen, no matter the privilege we wear." The room reacted, some nodding, others scoffing. She could read their expressions, a mixture of disbelief, curiosity, and amusement. Yet doubt wove through her mind like a sly serpent. Was this challenge foolish? Would it lead her into deeper despair or pave a way for transformation? The stakes felt insurmountable, but the thought of Jonah's future fueled her resolve. Why not start with a dinner, she proposed, and felt a surge of daring as the words tumbled from her mouth. A gathering where contrasting lives merge, where no story is off limits. Silence enveloped the room momentarily, stretching out like an eternity, until the initial critic broke in with a mocking laugh that felt like daggers. A dinner? What's stopping us from attending a charity gala instead? Emily's brow furrowed, sensing the mocking undercurrent in his tone. That's exactly the point, she responded, a fire igniting in her chest. Let's break barriers instead of building walls. I'm not interested in token gestures. I propose real engagement, where wealth doesn't dictate whose story gets told. A ripple of surprise swept through the crowd, a combination of skepticism tempered with genuine intrigue. She noticed more than one person leaning forward, their expressions shifting. It was a small victory, but she could feel it like the crack of a door opening just enough for her to slip through. "Let's talk logistics," drawled the ally, a businessman with a sharp suit and sharper smile, his eyes sparkling with challenge. "If you think this is going to work, you'll need to have a solid plan. A dinner without substance will flop faster than a cheap soufflé." The urge to retreat clawed at her, but Emily pressed through. "I'll outline who we can invite, those whose lives have crossed paths with service and privilege. I want to share what I've seen, felt, endured. This can't be just another networking event. It must serve as a crucible for transformation." "Fine," he said, the challenge morphing into collaboration, and she caught the glimmers of approval from others. "I'll help you, but only under one condition. You have to convince them to come." The prospect of reaching out to people who had lived sheltered lives sent a pulse of uncertainty through her, but determination solidified within. Emily had never been one to walk away from a vigorous debate, and now that scrappy spirit surged. Realizing she had unwittingly crossed an invisible threshold, her confidence grew along with the desire to create lasting connections that tore down the barriers she had always faced. As the initial glances transformed into curious inquiries, she recognized the gravity of her task. The challenge to invite stories unknown to many would require more than just courage. Feeling a palpable shift, she was aware that she was not merely swinging doors of perception open, she was also confronting her own hidden insecurities and the shame that lingered from being underestimated. Would she finally step into her worth and embrace the responsibility of leading this newfound dialogue? As the night continued, the conversation encircled her, electrifying her thoughts with both risk and purpose. She felt the walls of her limitations pressing in, but each nod of encouragement from her new ally fortified her resolve. This is just the beginning, she thought, but who will truly be brave enough to confront their own stories? And just as doubt crept back in, Emily caught sight of new faces emerging, some curious, some welcoming. Their reactions could determine whether this dinner transformed into a platform for real dialogue or if it would fizzle into yet another overhyped scheme. Determined to prevail, she clenched her fists, ready to dive deeper into this journey and perhaps finally unearth the truths she had long buried. Could she turn this fledgling endeavor into a force that could alter perceptions and inspire genuine change? The next chapter loomed just ahead, laden with lingering uncertainty. The fusion of their narratives awaited, but would they uncover the courage necessary to embrace their stories? Emily awoke the next morning with purpose coursing through her veins. The challenge of convincing the elite to embrace vulnerabilities weighed heavily on her, yet a sense of clarity emerged. She was not merely fighting for her own voice, she was forging connections that could redefine narratives. As she brewed her morning coffee, her reflection in the glossy kitchen surface revealed a woman on the precipice of change, a marked departure from the timid soul who avoided confrontation. The day ahead felt like a labyrinth fraught with corridors of doubt and paths leading to unforeseen opportunities. She needed a strategy, a map to navigate this intricate maze. Emily grabbed her notebook and started jotting down names, those whose lives could provide depth to this planned gathering. But even as she wrote, her insecurities began to stir. Who was she to impose her narrative onto others? Yet the image of Jonah filled her with resolve.
He needed a future shaped by understanding and collaboration. Uncurling her fingers from the cramped grip on her pen, she took a deep breath and set out to contact a few of those on her list. The first call was to an old friend, Sarah, whose charitable work often intersected with Emily's past. As the phone rang, she rehearsed her pitch in her mind, trying to anticipate objections. But when Sarah answered, Emily's confidence escalated. "Hey, Sarah, I've been thinking about how we can bridge stories of privilege with those who are often overlooked in our circles," she started enthusiastically. "I like the sound of that. What do you have in mind?" Sarah replied, already intrigued. Their conversation produced a natural flow of ideas. Sarah suggested various individuals whose narratives could add richness to the event. As they brainstormed, Emily realized she was not just sharing a vision, but also gaining valuable insight into building a compelling guest list. The conversation ended with a promise to collaborate on the logistics and outreach. The next call, however, sparked a different kind of anxiety. She was about to reach out to Gregory, a successful hedge fund manager known for both his wealth and his infamously dismissive attitude toward community initiatives. He was notorious for sponsoring galas, not for engaging honestly in dialogues. As the phone rang, she questioned her motivation. Was this sheer audacity or sheer folly? "Emily," he answered with a hint of surprise. "The challenge is real, Gregory," she said, her voice steadying. "I'd like you to attend a dinner that aims to bring together contrasting narratives. Your story could offer a critical perspective." She felt his skepticism radiate over the line. "You think I would sit around and listen to some sob stories while licking my caviar? What's in it for me?" Shots of doubt ricocheted through her. "A chance to engage with realities you've perhaps never considered. It could reflect on your business and create more impactful partnerships, ones that matter." A pregnant pause stretched through the receiver, and for a moment she feared the conversation was a wasted effort. But Emily pushed forward. "You often talk about legacy. Imagine the powerful narrative you could create if you truly connect with those you serve." "A feasible pitch, but I'll need more than just altruism to get there," he offered, a hint of intrigue entering his voice, albeit coated in the default armor of elitism. As she hung up, the weariness set in. Convincing someone like Gregory would demand resilience and creativity. She had ignited curiosity, ever so subtly, but would it be enough to light a fire? Emily reflected on the significance of her reach. It was not solely about inviting people to dinner. It was about dismantling barriers that wealth constructed, engaging with deeply entrenched ways of thinking. Determining her next steps required finesse. She set her sights on social media to garner broader interest, choosing her words carefully as she crafted a post that hinted at the dinner's promise of transformative dialogue. Simultaneously, she contemplated the balance of privacy. Preserving stories required trust. How could she navigate this web delicately? As notifications began to ping, announcing likes and comments, apprehension gnawed at her. What if their enthusiasm was surface level, mere chirps in isolation? Would they truly engage, or would they stay confined in their privileged bubbles? The world became a kaleidoscope of possibilities as she moved through the day, but confusion and uncertainty loomed over her like a thick fog. Would her efforts ultimately lead to genuine conversations or merely reinforce existing divides? The reality weighed heavy. She needed to embody the change she sought, even if her own story had yet to fully resolve. Uncertainty encroached upon her newfound confidence, but one thing remained clear. The invitation was a challenge, a litmus test,
not just for them, but for her own growth. How much risk was she willing to embrace to forge this new path? The mirror of questions reflected back at her ominously, leading to a soul-chilling revelation. The moment had come to face her deepest fears head-on. Would she find allies in the vulnerable truths of others, or would she discover an even more isolating fear within herself? Emily's resolve crystallized as the day stretched toward evening. Each passing moment seemed to echo the weight of her ambition, yet intoxicating clarity served as her guide. She sat at the small wooden desk, illuminated softly by a lamp, her thoughts racing ahead of her. The strategic threads she needed to weave were becoming clearer, but fear still clutched at the corners of her mind. She had taken the first steps, made the calls, sparked the intrigue, but the true challenge awaited. Gathering these disparate lives around a table was one thing. Getting them to engage authentically and deeply was another. The notion of creating a dialogue that dismantled the barriers of elitism was compelling, but it was interlaced with a gnawing fear of futility. Emily glanced out the window, where the dusky sky began to blossom with muted colors. The beauty of it, juxtaposed with her internal tumult, struck her profoundly. She pulled out her notebook once more and scribbled, reflecting on her intentions. What did she genuinely hope to achieve? It wasn't just about the stories, it was about catalyzing understanding. The phone rang again, jarring her from a spiral of introspection. It was Sarah, her enthusiasm buzzing over the line, a stark reminder of the power of connection. "I've been thinking," Sarah began, "what if we included a discussion facilitator, someone who can help steer the conversation beyond small talk?" The idea resonated with Emily, igniting a spark within her. Absolutely, that could elevate the event and ensure we remain anchored in genuine engagement. As they fleshed out details, they discussed experts in conflict resolution and communication, people who could draw out nuanced conversations between those with vastly different life experiences. With every suggestion, Emily felt lighter. Actions rooted in collaboration alleviated the burden on her shoulders. Yet, even as new plans formed, dread settled in the pit of her stomach. The very idea of leaders, such as Gregory, coming together with those less privileged terrified her. What if he chose to shut down dissent instead of allowing vulnerability? Could she trust herself to mediate potential conflicts? Grappling with these questions, she knew she had to confront her personal fears head-on. It was not just the elite that intimidated her, but the matter of wielding her newfound influence responsibly. She could no longer depend solely on others for clarity. This was her moment to define what leadership meant to her. Each contemplative breath brought her closer to realizing that true leadership required navigating discomfort. She needed to model the openness and honesty she sought to elicit from others. What if she challenged herself to be the first to share her own vulnerability at the gathering? Would that act serve as a catalyst, dissolving defenses and inviting others to reveal themselves? Emily grasped her pen tightly, feeling the pulse of possibility. The invitation she was crafting was more than a request for presence. It was an invitation to radical honesty, and it had to begin with her. Would she open up? Could she bear the weight of her truth before the eyes of those she admired and feared? Determined, she typed a message to Gregory, encapsulating her vision and the personal stake she had in the outcome. You have the opportunity to share your story, not just as an elite, but as a human. We can learn from each other. I can promise you an experience that transcends expectations. As she stared at the blinking cursor, she felt the flicker of doubt ignite within her. Was this invitation an act of courage or simply naivete? Yet that familiar urgency surged through her veins again. For the first time, she decided to let her vulnerability pave the way for authenticity. The message sent, an unexpected clarity washed over her. She was standing at the cusp of something monumental. Understanding initiated by faith in her own voice and in the stories of others. It was time to confront not just the elite's discomfort, but her own as well. A balance she needed to establish within herself. Rising from her desk, her heart raced, fueling her thoughts with the raw energy of impending confrontation. She longed to witness genuine connections emerge from shared truths, but now faced the undeniable reality of her own shadows. The evening faded to darkness as the streetlights flickered on. A reflection of her transition emerged. Was she illuminating the path, or was she too shrouded in the dark? This event would be her moment of truth, a rendezvous with both allies and adversaries. And as she took a breath to steady herself, one question loomed. Would this challenge turn her into a leader forged in vulnerability, or would she remain unable to bridge the chasm that scared her most? As dawn broke, casting a glow through her bedroom window, Emily awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. The weight of the previous evening's decision lingered, but instead of paralysis, it sparked a torrent of strategies in her mind. Today, her thoughts crystallized around the possibility of catalyzing transformation, not just in others, but within herself. She dressed with intention, slipping on a tailored blazer that felt more like armor than fabric. It was a small act, yet it boosted her confidence, a reflection of her commitment to embody the leadership she aspired to. Standing in front of the mirror, she practiced her introduction to the gathering that loomed ahead, her voice steady and clear. The act of vocalizing her thoughts was a reminder that she was capable of commanding a room, even more so when vulnerability was her guide. By the time she reached her office, Emily felt a sense of electrifying urgency. The task ahead was daunting, but today could redefine her trajectory. She turned her attention to research, reading about leaders who had successfully navigated uncomfortable conversations and fostered real dialogue. Simon Sinek's principles on trust and vulnerability resonated deeply. She typed furiously in her notebook, highlighting key phrases. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. She internalized these concepts, knowing she needed to communicate the mission beyond mere logistics. But there was another emerging thread, the timing. Each moment leading to the gathering felt weighty, a countdown to both dialogue and internal reckoning. Would they see her as credible if she leaned into her vulnerability? She imagined the faces around the table, some curious, others skeptical. Each thought seeped into her resolve. She needed to align her intentions with authenticity. Returning to her desk after lunch, she opened her laptop and hesitated at the message thread with Gregory. Recipients in her contacts weren't just people. They were powerful entities, various narratives intertwined with her own. Casting her gaze across the screen, she sensed how vital it was that she articulate her expectations for collaboration, rather than simply an invitation. Taking a deep breath, she challenged herself to write from the heart. Instead of a formal email, she composed a message that reflected her own fears and aspirations. I believe our stories can reshape perspectives. Your presence isn't just appreciated, it's essential for establishing a genuine conversation. As she clicked send, a hum of excitement coursed through her. What would happen next? That afternoon, she shifted her focus to potential partners, a community mediator, skilled in easing tensions. An idea took form after a conversation with a seasoned facilitator, Mia, whose experience with diverse groups could bridge the anticipated chasm. Emily envisioned calling upon Mia to share her insights at the gathering, almost as if to lend her support while subtly acknowledging her own insecurities. Yet doubt persisted, surging forth as the day wore on. What if Mia's guidance fell short? What if she inadvertently heightened the tension instead of diffusing it? Each scenario pulsed in her mind like a drumbeat, compelling her to confront her perceived limitations. The office grew quiet as the sun dipped low in the sky, and she took a few moments to breathe in the silence, trying to dispel the nervous energy surging within her. Could she wield her influence to respectfully challenge the notion of elitism? Or would she cower behind her perceived inadequacies? The stakes were real. She understood the delicate dance of navigating privilege and vulnerability. Perhaps this invitation to authenticity still loomed over her,
An invitation not just to others, but to herself, to rise to the occasion, to require courage of herself as a leader. As she took her leave for the day, she sensed an impending shift. Tomorrow would not only bring the potential for impactful dialogues, it would also demand a crucial confrontation of her own fears. The chance for true connection loomed ahead, filled with uncertainty and possibility. And before she stepped onto the sidewalk, the question clung to her mind. How could she genuinely inspire openness if she remained shackled by her apprehensions? Would she find the courage to embrace her own narrative, or would the fear of judgment stifle her voice before the gathering even began? Emily awoke the next morning with a knot of tension in her stomach, a tangible manifestation of her anticipation. Today was the day she would step into her vulnerability, face the gathering, and bring forth the dialogue she had envisioned. Yet with each heartbeat, questions loomed larger. Was she truly prepared? Did she have anything of value to offer? As she dressed, she paused in front of the mirror again, noticing the way her tailored blazer accentuated her posture, everything about it saying leader. But was a mere exterior enough to shield her from the internal storm? The reflection stared back, daring her to unshackle the voice that pulsed beneath layers of self-doubt. With a deep breath, she left her apartment, the brisk morning air awakening her senses. Each step toward the office felt monumental. What if she faltered? What if the very authenticity she wished to share was dismissed? The possibility stung, powerfully acute, yet there was also an undercurrent of resolve. She wasn't merely showing up, she was choosing to show up as her true self. Arriving at her desk, she opened her laptop to review her notes. She had meticulously mapped out the structure of the gathering, outlining points that reflected both her mission and her values. Yet there was one area she hadn't fully addressed, her own narrative. It was time to confront the story that defined her, a young woman striving to command respect in a room that often echoed with voices louder than her own. As the clock inched closer to meeting time, Emily felt her heart race. She needed to take a step back and reclaim her narrative. With trembling fingers, she typed a few lines about her journey. How struggling to gain footing had shaped her understanding of leadership. How vulnerability was not a weakness, but a powerful tool that had enabled her to build connections. She hit save and resolved that whatever lay ahead, this truth would anchor her. When the gathering finally commenced, she entered the room with her stomach fluttering wildly. Voices enveloped her, and she felt a wave of anxiety crash over her. Yet, just like the night before, she traced familiar faces, some eager, others skeptical. Their expressions mirrored a tapestry of expectations and judgments that she had built up in her mind. The initial discussions began. As she listened, Emily made mental notes, strategizing how to weave her personal narrative into the dialogue seamlessly. Mia, who had agreed to facilitate early on, encouraged contributions from everyone. Each voice created a complex rhythm that Emily wanted to join, yet it felt daunting. The collective discussion surged ahead, and her thoughts began racing. Would anyone even want to hear her perspective? After a particularly charged comment from one of her colleagues about elitism, Emily sensed an opening. Steeling herself, she raised her hand, internally battling against the drumroll of doubt in her mind. "I'd like to share a thought," she said, her voice steady but soft, carrying an urgency born out of desire for connection. Silence fell, all eyes turning to her. There it was, the moment hung heavy with anticipation. Would she rise above the fray with her honest words, or would retreat into safety seem more appealing? She took a breath, recalling the message she had sent to Gregory, the candidness of vulnerability morphing into her shield. "I believe we all come from different webs of stories that shape our views. I have often felt sidelined in conversations like these, but I realize that my experiences can contribute to this dialogue." Each word exited her lips confidently, yet the insecurity mixed with excitement painted her tone. And then she opened up about her narrative. As she spoke, she felt the initial constraints of fear begin to dissolve, replaced by something liberating, empowerment. This shift sparked reactions across the room. Some nods, murmurs of agreement, and subtle smiles punctuated her story, building momentum as each line wrapped around the collective consciousness. But just as the atmosphere shifted towards understanding, the familiar skepticism crept back in with another colleague's challenging question. But how can we change systemic issues when individual stories sound nice but fail to address practical solutions? The stakes shifted in an instant. The air in the room thickened, and tension threaded its way through her choices. Emily couldn't fail now. She needed to respond not only to defend her point, but to illustrate the very transformation she craved to inspire. Would answering that challenge be the moment that defined her voice? She took another deep breath, feeling a rush of determination. This was not merely an opportunity, it was the crucible in which her leadership would be tested. The moment had come to truly confront the conflict that not only lay outside of her, but within. She steadied herself, ready to...
Those truths empower us to ask hard questions about the status quo, to hold each other accountable as we pursue real solutions. As she spoke, a flicker of inspiration ignited within her. What if these personal narratives could serve as both an anchor and a roadmap? By conveying how each struggle related back to larger systemic inequalities, she could inspire practical change alongside empathy. Yet beneath her burgeoning confidence was a fresh wave of uncertainty. Was she capable of driving this momentum into practical solutions? The reality of leadership wasn't just about speaking. It involved sculpting the conversation into actionable pathways. The discussions began to gather steam, interlacing personal stories with concrete strategies. Emily could feel the framework of something powerful forming beneath the surface, something that could redefine their approach to leadership. But would it be enough? And just as the dialogue grew richer, her mind veered towards the challenges she had not yet confronted. The doubt whispering on the fringes of her courage, that feeling of inadequacy beckoned her to question whether she could lead this evolution. Could she be the catalyst they needed, or was she simply a bystander in her narrative? As confidence battled with creeping fear, she realized this was just the beginning. The heart of their conversation had opened, but more challenges awaited, tests that would thoroughly probe her determination to truly lead. With this new revelation settling in her mind, she wrestled with the question that loomed ahead. Would she embrace the opportunity to shape the outcomes of her narrative, or would she let fears of inadequacy overwhelm her once more? The atmosphere in the conference room felt electric as Emily continued to navigate through the dialogue that had sparked unprecedented momentum. Once merely a waitress, her journey from beneath the weight of her low socioeconomic background to now standing among the elite unfolded as she commandingly engaged the powerful figures surrounding her. She had broken down barriers by sharing her story, pushing the guests to confront their realities. But now it was no longer just their perspectives she needed to challenge. She had to settle deeper questions within herself. Each voice contributed to a rich tapestry of thoughts, weaving together disparate experiences that echoed the systemic issues they had previously acknowledged but rarely addressed head-on. She caught glimpses of empathy igniting in the eyes of her colleagues as they embraced the possibility of radical understanding and transformation. Yet in herself, self-doubt simmered, competing with the surge of empowerment she felt taking hold. Could she maintain this intensity? Was she truly capable of facilitating lasting change among the elite? Emily, let's hear more about how you envision the actionable steps we can take from the discussions we're having today, Mia prompted, nudging her toward the next phase of their conversation. The directness of the request anchored Emily, forcing her to confront the raw ambition that now bled forth from the earlier insecurities.
"I think it starts with accountability," she stated, feeling a grounded confidence deepen
within her. Each of us brings an essential perspective. If we create a commitment from both ends, those who come from privilege and those who have experienced hardship, we can initiate tangible projects aimed at community upliftment. The words resonated throughout the room, solidifying the foundation of her vision. She could see the wheels turning in several minds. Perhaps this was the turning point. This could be the moment she would embrace the leader she had been striving to become. Another affluent colleague chimed in, "But how do we ensure that these initiatives reach those who need them without falling prey to our own blind spots?" As the dialogue became sharper, Emily felt a surge of adrenaline. "That's precisely why we need to form a diverse advisory board," she proposed. "We must ensure the voices of those we aim to serve are at the decision-making table, steering our initiatives so we're not just perpetuating the same systems that created these divides." In that moment, she understood. This was not just about her personal achievement. It was about a new paradigm that centered equity in every step she now envisioned taking. Her experience had prepared her for this moment, and she was ready to seize it. No longer a maid on the periphery, but a facilitator of genuine dialogue and actionable change. As the meeting proceeded, Emily found herself filled with clarity. She shared specific ideas for initiatives that blended mentorship programs with resource distribution, designed to connect young, aspiring individuals with leaders willing to engage genuinely. Ideas flowed like a symphony, each person contributing new notes to a growing composition. By the close of the meeting, Emily felt a palpable shift. The challenges that once felt insurmountable were dissipating, replaced with an eagerness to bring these plans to fruition. Colleagues began writing down names and brainstorming timelines, setting actionable commitments into motion in a way Emily had not envisioned possible just months before. In the final minutes, she took a step back, surveying the faces in the room. Genuine curiosity and determination glimmered in their expressions, a far cry from the earlier storm of skepticism she faced. In that instant, it became clear. She had transformed. This was the culmination of her efforts. She had reshaped her narrative from one of struggling to a figure of influence among those who once intimidated her. The journey to arrive here, facing initial doubt, overcoming skepticism, and pushing through uncertainty, had equipped Emily with layered strengths she hadn't fully appreciated until now. She had embraced vulnerability and transformed it into resolve, harnessing her unique perspective to spark meaningful dialogue. As she walked out of the conference room, her heart swelled with triumph. She was no longer a shadow among the affluent. She had established herself as a leader capable of not only influencing, but also inspiring. Giving Jonah a legacy of resilience was no longer just an aspiration, it was a concrete reality. Emily had conquered her doubts, demonstrated undeniable competence, and achieved a footing within a realm she once thought inaccessible. And with every step she took, she felt the foundation of something monumental take root, not just for herself, but for every story that echoed within those walls. This was just the beginning. She had embarked on a pathway to change that would ripple through communities and lives beyond her own, achieving a legacy built on understanding and genuine connection. So now, to all of you eager viewers, this is your moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let everyone else know how transformative this journey was. We want to hear your reactions and theories in the comments. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.